And welcome into the Make the Money and Run podcast. Let me just set this up here. Vasu Party here with you on the Make the Money and Run podcast solo. As you see the new logo here, we're sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola. Check them out on the shores of the Pacific Ocean near Santa Cruz. Get down there at facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola. And then if you're in Silicon Valley for any reason, check out the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. All right, welcome into the studio. Vasu Party here, solo hosting today. As usual, from Monday, we have a guest. Our regular sports attorney has been on with us several times. Lots of news in the world of sports and the world of legalese, and no better than the Garagos sports attorney, host of the podcast, Conduct Detrimental. He is, of course, Daniel Lust. How are you, Daniel?
Good, Vasu. We've been, whatever way you want to put it, we've either been blessed or we've been cursed, but we got a lot of sports law stories this last week and a half, 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's been fun. It's been busy, but it's been fun.
Good. Well, baseball just ended, so lots of things going on in the offseason for them as well, too. We'll get to all that. Obviously, some of the scandals that have been going on with the Chicago Blackhawks and these sexual assaults in the NBA or alleged workplace harassments, I guess. My old HR coming back, my old HR antennas coming back when I read some of these stories. But you can reach Daniel Lust at Sports Law Lust on Twitter and Instagram, sports attorney for Garagos Law Firm. Conduct Detrimental podcast at Con Detrimental. All right, let's get to it here. The first thing that you've had a lot of play on that I've noticed on your Twitter site, by the way, thanks for following me as well, too. The Los Angeles Rams and Stan Kroenke, their owner, after they left St. Louis, is having a beef with the city of St. Louis. Now, I venture to say with all the other things I've got going on, I'm only reading a periphery, and I'm sure a lot of other people are reading it that way too. But if I'm not mistaken, not only is he in a fight with the city of St. Louis, there's also an issue with the other NFL owners going on as well too. So you want to take it from there? I'll just give you the floor for there.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess let's work backwards. Right now, there's a lawsuit by the city of St. Louis, County of St. Louis, against all 32 NFL owners, and obviously the NFL is named as a party as well. That is based on St. Louis's belief that basically they were defrauded from a team. That Stan Kroenke led the charge and basically stole illegally. They're alleging stole the Rams from St. Louis and gave it to Los Angeles. Could someone say from afar this is sour grapes? I saw it for a while, and then I started digging into this lawsuit. I'm like, well, there is a breach of contract component here. There is a kind of fraud element here, and when you start really digging into the pieces, you could see why St. Louis thinks they have a good case here. And then Vasu, I guess above and beyond that, right, from a high level, in order to move a team from one market to another market, it depends on a vote of the other NFL owners. You can't just have, kind of freewheeling and people moving where they want to move. You have to get approval from other NFL owners. So the reason
3/4, right? I believe it's 3/4, right?
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I think there's different numbers for different types of vote, but you need sufficient voting power from the powers that be. So the allegation here is that Stan Kroenke moved the team, and he kind of worked with the NFL to commit this fraud upon city of St. Louis. So really big lawsuit. And Vasu, you mentioned there is some kind of, we'll call it infighting, maybe some type of brewing civil war on the owner's side. Stan Kroenke at one point agreed to foot the bill. At least NFL owners thought he did, to foot the bill for all the legal costs and potential damages that would be incurred from this lawsuit. Now, Stan Kroenke, about 4 years into this case, billionaire owner of the Rams, is essentially saying, actually, I read the fine print. I'm not covering all of the costs. I'm going to cover a small sect. But you guys, the rest of the other 31 NFL owners, that's your responsibility as well. So, yeah, at the 11th hour, he's bringing that up. So, it's fighting. There's bullets, guns drawn from all angles here.
Okay, so they moved from St. Louis to Los Angeles 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I believe, when Jeff Fisher was still the coach. They were playing at the Coliseum down here near about 400 miles where I live in Los Angeles, near where I grew up. The problem that I see with that is if the NFL did he have a contract with St. Louis or the stadium still to do that? Because what's the difference if you go back, and there wasn't really a lot of other than hurt feelings between Baltimore leaving to Indianapolis. And that's the only one that I could think of in my generation in terms of just leaving after the vote came across for that. I mean, why couldn't Baltimore go after Indianapolis? Or if they did, why weren't they successful from that standpoint? As opposed to now, St. Louis thinks they have a case.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Just look back in NFL history. The last couple times a team has left the market, it's kind of returned in some way, shape, or form. So, right, Houston had the Houston Oilers. They went to Tennessee. Guess what happened? They got the Houston Texans, and then same deal over in Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns left. They went over to be the Baltimore Ravens, and then guess what? Cleveland Browns got a team back. So, my understanding is that at least with the Brown situation, I imagine the same thing with Houston. I just haven't heard it separately, but there was a deal said, hey, don't sue us, we'll give you a team. So that's why we don't normally have it. And then for whatever reason here, there's been studies that have been done that shows that the NFL can be just as profitable, if not more, if they had somewhere closer to 50 teams. Right? I've seen that study out there. St. Louis is a fantastic market. Why football has not returned to St. Louis, I'm not sure. St. Louis has lost. Right? They had the St. Louis Cardinals once upon a time. St. Louis football Cardinals. They went over to Arizona, and then guess what? St. Louis Rams came back. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And then Vasu, not to mention, there is a separate lawsuit that's going on in Oakland between the Oakland Raiders and the franchise as well.
Yeah.
So between the two, there's certainly no shortage of stories on this front.
Well, the A's also are having the tough times with Alameda County and the city of Oakland as well too, because there is some contract in place, and John Fisher, the owner, has said that they didn't act fast enough. And I know they're not exactly doing themselves any PR favors, I'm sure, because they're sending out surveys to Oakland A's fans about what they think about Las Vegas. So that's not exactly helping their cause either. But there's a lot of moving pieces with this. So where do you think eventually this goes with the Rams in St. Louis? Because you've had Howard Balzer, formerly of the Sporting News, a good football writer for a long time. Sporting News based in St. Louis. So I'm sure they have a little interest in it as well, even though Sporting News is not around anymore. But I'm sure they had some ties to the old St. Louis Rams as well, too. But where do you see this going? And is it going to be precedent setting for the future based on how the other owners react and based on how the city and Stan Kroenke himself understands this to be? Because there's a lot of money involved in terms of what St. Louis is losing versus what Stan Kroenke is not even paying back to his own brethren in the ownership group.
Yeah, I mean, let's just think of it. There's probably two forms of precedent we should pay attention to, right? The reason that St. Louis lost their team was probably dating back years before that. There was a stadium lease that was negotiated in such a way that allowed the Rams or we'll say Rams and Kroenke. It's a little confusing, obviously, the St. Louis Rams, but Rams don't belong to the city of St. Louis. And there was essentially a lease put in place that said if the Rams fall below, it's something called the first tier clause. If their stadium fell below the first tier, then this lease would turn into basically from a 30-year lease, to every 10 years, to something more akin to a year-by-year lease. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a city agree to that. I think that's really what caused this to start with. And then beyond that, right, what's going to happen next? I mean, this is scheduled for trial on January 10th. So in order to avoid a trial, you can settle a case or you can get a case dismissed. Those are really the only two ways that you can do that. And the motion for summary judgment, a fancy way of saying dismissal, was denied by the judge. So short of some type of very big settlement, some big precedent setting settlement, we're going to go to trial. And it's going to be, hopefully picked up by all the news outlets. But this is a very big case with billions at stake. Stan Kroenke made legitimately billions of dollars by moving a team from St. Louis to Los Angeles. And all of that money is going to be at stake. So there's a little more complicated of the damages analysis, but enough money's on the table to scare the NFL when you use a word like B with billions.
Yeah,
a lot of money here.
Yeah. Do you know if he paid for the SoFi Stadium himself, or Los Angeles had a part in that as well too? I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine Los Angeles had a part of it. I rarely see these owners. I'm sure Kroenke can foot the bill, but
other than your San Francisco Giants, they're the only ones that I know of in the last 20 years that have fully paid their own.
Yeah, it's very rare, especially now when part of the deal is, hey, come to whatever market, be Las Vegas or whatever else, and there's a lot of money either going to be paid into the NFL, and so these teams are a hot commodity. So yeah, that wouldn't shock me. I don't have the numbers offhand, but I certainly think so.
All right, so last one on this, and you said the backroom deals of the NFL owners not being sued. With the infighting going on, do you think the other 31 owners could say to St. Louis, we'll get you a team like they did for Cleveland and Houston going backwards? And is that going to upset Stan Kroenke because he feels like they're going behind him? But right now it seems like he's going behind the other owners from that standpoint. Could they do that? And what's the biggest piece of this, of the multitude of scenarios that are going on with the Rams and the city of St. Louis? What's the biggest piece, or I guess the biggest session of complaint by the city of St. Louis, and then what's the retort from the Rams to what you think the biggest piece is that upsets St. Louis more than anything in this 4-year process?
What does biggest piece mean?
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of I'm not a legalese guy, but I assume
I don't. You can tell
I'm
me.
assuming I assume there's a lot of different facts that go into it in terms of like point A, point B, point C, and this has taken 4 years already to say this is not. It doesn't seem to be as simple as you breached a contract, you left St. Louis. Here we're going to LA and we're going to see for everything you have. So there has to be some reasoning for St. Louis to do that. And I just wondered if you have an idea or reading the stuff of what may be the biggest issue with St. Louis.
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, so here's the story that's picking up a lot of steam in St. Louis.
By the way, that's my best non-law degree explanation of how I explained that.
Well, peace was not a legal term. It was something I didn't know about. I wasn't sure. Maybe that was just a California term. I don't know.
Okay, but, yeah, it is. Yeah. It is.
So I guess from a high level, the story that's or the issue of this case that's picking up a lot of steam. We were on this for a while back, but think about it very practically. If St. Louis goes to trial with the NFL, and mind you, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand this. It's home field advantage. This case is being tried in a St. Louis courtroom in front of a St. Louis jury. So people of St. Louis, I can tell you, they do not like the NFL. They do not like Roger Goodell. They do not like Stan Kroenke because he stole their team. So even if you're not a football fan, the city of St. Louis is the plaintiff. So if the city of St. Louis gets $2 billion or $3 billion, that money is pumped into the economy. So you might say to yourself, maybe this is a little bit unfair that this case is being tried in St. Louis. The NFL is arguing the same exact thing. So yeah, I mean, that's I guess issue number one. The NFL has a problem that this case is being tried in St. Louis. That issue is up on at the appeals courts right now. From a substantive perspective, what the NFL is arguing is saying, hey, we have procedures in place to move a team to another market. This is not a contract. These are loose guidelines that we have to follow. St. Louis is saying, no, these are binding contracts. So that's number one. And then the NFL is saying, even if this was a binding contract, we followed everything to a T. We had town halls. We are allowed to move. You are not allowed to hold us hostage and stay in St. Louis. We are allowed to leave. So that's really what's up on debate here. Was this a deal gone wrong, or was this just, hey, you guys are upset that we left and there was no deal in place. There's no contract that required us to stay put. So the question is, Basu, from a, again, this is what we were kind of foreshadowing, is these teams, whenever they move, they go to Las Vegas, they go, to Los Angeles. There's a 9-figure amount that is paid into the NFL. It's called the relocation fee. So I don't know, would you rather, right, if you're the NFL, would you rather risk going to a St. Louis jury and getting hit with billions of dollars? And you have to pay billions of dollars to St. Louis. Or would you rather say, you know what, St. Louis, we don't have to give you a team, but we're going to. You guys give us $500 million, and we'll throw you $100 million, some non-insignificant number. And we'll give you a team, but just you're not going to get billions from us, but we'll give you a team. Could that happen? Sure. So since we've been out there and saying that was logical, we have seen reports that the NFL is actually preparing that as a settlement offer. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but I'm certainly seeing reports that that's out there, that's put into the zeitgeist, as they say.
All right, our guest Daniel Lust of the Garrigo Sports Law Firm, sports attorney. He's been on with us for a little bit. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and Capitola. All right, the CBA in baseball is going to expire. It's already expired, I assume, when the World Series ended. Rob Manfred and Tony Clark, the body language from all the photos I've seen shows that they probably don't like each other very much, and this is going to be a tough negotiation. This is bad for the fans of baseball, whose average age of a fan is a 57-year-old white man. They're not exactly doing their best to ingratiate the new generation of baseball fans into the foreshadowing of the next dollars that are coming in. They don't need my dollars anymore. They don't need, you're still a young man, probably can still use your dollars. But the point being that the 18 to 49 group is what they're looking for, and they're not able to get that target audience that they're looking for the next set of money. Here's the new CBA coming in. Their body language, it seems like they don't get along with each other. They're having problems with Atlanta, and they're having problems with groups that are protesting the nicknames of teams. The Indians are going to change to the Guardians. Are we in for a long CBA, do you think, or are they going to have a state of order maybe for one more year and get to another point?
Yeah, I mean, you said something interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily so legal, but I imagine it's going to come into play in CBA negotiations. I saw this obviously the Braves won the World Series within the last week. I can't really explain it, but ESPN's or SportsCenter's Instagram account didn't have any posts on the Braves winning the World Series, at least for a certain amount of time. Then obviously they came out with stuff, but they had these clips from basketball and dunks and this from football and college football. And I'm like, baseball, they're not in the narrative when it comes to Instagram. It's someone's going to be doing a better job somewhere. But yeah, I can't really put my finger on it. But that's certainly, I mean, the CBA. Why you negotiate the CBA is how to allocate money over the course of the next few years, right? How to split up that pie. That's usually the number one issue, and then you work your way down. You have to figure out where the pie is going to move, and then each subsequent issue, be it player safety, be it rules, be it extra inning rules. Anytime the team or the players want to force the owners to give pieces or points, we'll say, of the revenue pie get adjusted. So you don't, not necessarily anything happened this year, but essentially you had a CBA negotiation within the last 365 days with this whole COVID nonsense, right? You had the COVID rules that were a really heated and contested negotiation. You had Rob Manfred. I think I've mentioned it on this show before. Rob Manfred is getting, he's the subject of this $500 million grievance because he was allegedly negotiating in bad faith with the Players Association during these COVID negotiations.
Yeah.
So a lot of bad blood between the two, a lot of sniping in the media between the two. They're relatively quiet over the course of this current season, but those wounds are still fresh, I would imagine, from the last COVID negotiation. Football didn't really have to deal with it because they got their COVID, they got their CBA done just prior to COVID. They did it. They finished it, I think, the first week of March was when it was ratified. It was March of 2020. And then baseball has the misfortune of being the first of our four major sports to have their CBA up for negotiation in the post-COVID world. So, yeah, so we'll see. I think it's going to be pretty heated. I can't tell you exactly where the issues, where the chips are going to fall, but Rob Manfred is not a popular guy. Tony Clark, my sourcing on it is he's not so popular either. So both these guys are kind of fighting for their job. We'll see. I think Manfred probably has a little bit more job security. But really the qualifications of being a commissioner of pro sports are just being an effective punching bag. So maybe Rob Manfred is qualified for it.
Right. That was my point I was going to get to. You think these guys, if they knew that what they were getting into, Manfred, Bettman, Goodell, and Adam Silver are commissioners of the league, and people sometimes forget that the teams are the ones that are paying them or the league's the ones that are paying them, but they're the face of the 30 or 32 teams, depending on what league you're talking about. When they say they're not popular, it's only what they're doing is relaying information that the owners want them to do. And I think a lot of people forget that point, that it's really not these four individuals. It's what the league wants in terms of dealing with the players union and all the marketing and everything that goes on with the leagues, right? I'm assuming. So that makes them in bad faith based on your average Joe making his 9-to-5 living, seeing all these billions and millions going back and forth. It just looks bad in the news to see this kind of negotiations go. The reason I bring that up, obviously, the CBA is a big thing for baseball. Nobody wants to see baseball go away. Trevor Bauer got pulled off of administrative leave a few weeks ago by the Dodgers. So I don't know if that means he's getting paid or he's still a member. There hasn't been any word of them releasing him or anything like that. I know baseball's got guaranteed contract. I don't know if the Marcell Ozuna case is still unresolved. With this CBA agreement expiring and the new contract needed, what is the league going to do in terms of CBA, in terms of punishment, or how can they go forward with this on this?
Yeah, I think the Bauer rule or the Bauer case was illustrative. At the end of the day, Bauer, I guess the news on Bauer, he opted into his deal. I think that was the worst kept secret in baseball. Bauer is a guy that might not be playing for the Dodgers next year as well. He could be, maybe they just tell him to go sit at home, but Bauer, under the administrative leave list, is going to get paid his full salary pending the results of Major League Baseball investigation. My understanding is that there still is some open cases against him. The statute of limitations has not run on a civil level on some of these lawsuits, or potential lawsuits. So yeah, it's an odd scenario. Baseball or Dodgers are just eating basically $100 million. I guess the remaining portion of the 3-year $100 million contract that he signed this past offseason. So it doesn't necessarily seem fair. For Ozuna, I'm not sure where the case left off. I think they dropped the criminal charges, but I'm not sure if anything else was going to come of that. But yeah, I think it's pretty unfair for the Dodgers purposes that this is an indefinite investigation. It can go on for a year, right? Or a couple months in at this point. I don't see anything clearing up, and I'm sure they want to cut bait. And Bauer holds all the cards for a guy that I don't think anybody is so pleased with on a couple levels. Not to mention that he might not have disclosed some facts about the older cases when he signed with the Dodgers.
But in player services contracts, this is something, it's a privilege to play, right? In the Dodgers, from a baseball standpoint, can they release him, or are there legal issues releasing him while he's under investigation?
They can't. Well, I mean, at least my understanding is baseball contracts are guaranteed. We
Right,
had someone, like when you say guaranteed, it's not football guaranteed, it's baseball guaranteed.
right.
Guaranteed means guaranteed. So yeah, I know there was a story years ago with Denny Nagel with the Colorado Rockies when he like allegedly solicited a prostitute,
Mm-hmm.
and they released him, but then he was due all of his money. Um, so I don't know. I don't, I think at a certain point there's going to be a grievance filed if they try to do that, if they try to claw back their money. But I don't, it's just a bad look. I'm sure the Dodgers would love to cut him right now, but we'll see. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. It would send a bad message, I think, probably to players if you just cut bait on the guy. So it's a really expensive deal. It's probably like in the vicinity of 60, 70 million still left.
Right.
And Bauer, I don't think I've taken plenty of polls on this on Twitter, as you've seen, Bazu. Majority of people think that Bauer's never going to play again for the Dodgers, and
No,
just going to eat all of that money. It's just a strange look.
All right, last one for you. I know you got a couple of minutes for you. The situation in Chicago with the Blackhawks, the sexual assault that happened in the 2010 season. Terrible circumstances for and I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan, and I remember the Cup days. But everything that's come out now, 11 years later, with Kyle Beach, Joel Quenneville had to resign from the Florida Panthers. They're the best team in hockey right now, so that was bad timing for them. Bowman resigned. He was dropped from the Olympic Hockey Board. Is there any pursuit for Kyle Beach still on a sexual assault like this after so much time has gone by to go after the Blackhawks or go after the league, or are there statute of limitations on that? And what's his recourse other than being on Canadian Sports Center telling his story?
Yeah, I would think there would have been statute of limitations issues, but he's bringing his case, he's amending his claim to include some additional claims here. This is not something that he didn't know about. He certainly could have brought this case years ago. And he did let people know around the organization that this occurred. So, but that said, I think his case is going forward. I think the NFL is probably in their interest to try to settle this case fairly quickly. I know that Bettman, I believe, met with his representatives. I know the NFLPA was trying to get involved to try to help make this thing go away. From just a legal perspective, it's certainly really ugly, right? There's something in the law called vicarious liability, another concept called negligent supervision. Vicarious liability is this term that you as an employer can be held liable for the acts of your employees, if they do something inappropriate, or illegal within the scope of their employment. It's a question as to whether Kyle Beach, whether this incident occurred within the scope of, employment of the involved employee video coordinator. But I guess they were watching video at the time this thing happened. So it's rough. And then obviously there's a cover up behind the scenes. So certainly those are acts that are done within the scope of employment. And then negligent supervision at a high level, where the Blackhawks, where were the Blackhawks in all this? Where was the brass? So yeah, those are the two pieces of it. Messy allegation, but then there's more. I mean, like the Phoenix Suns, the Portland Trailblazers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, all within the last week or so, this has come out.
Yeah, after Donald's turn. A lot more to talk about when we talk to Daniel Lust the next time he has to go. We're going to get on with the Make the Money and Run podcast. Daniel Lust at Sports Law Lust on Instagram and Twitter for the Garagos Law Firm. Conduct Detrimental podcast, at Con Detrimental on Twitter. A terrific podcast, a terrific listen if you're interested in the legal side of sports on the Make the Money and Run podcast. As always, Daniel, appreciate it. We'll get to you next time. We'll get to the rest of the issues, and we'll talk a little bit more about sports as we get through the holidays. If I don't talk to you before Thanksgiving or Christmas, have a happy holiday, but I'm sure we will talk at some point.
You too, buddy. My pleasure.
All right, Dan, take care. Daniel Lust, our sports attorney. Vasu Vadaparty back with you on the Make the Money and Run podcast. All right, what a weekend it was in the NFL. The underdogs still roll 10-5 last week, 9-4 going into tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Chicago Bears tonight in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field, 8 o'clock on ESPN, 8:20 officially for the time frame. Major League Baseball ended last week. We've got some NBA stories to talk about as well, too. And in college football, another upset of a top 5 BCS team. We're into week 2 of the BCS going, and already an upset, already a change of guard. We'll see what that means for the rest of the top 10 and also the top 25 of the BCS rankings as we get to it. In 30 seconds, we'll come back and continue with the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vadaparty here, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and the Britannia Arms of Capitola. Check them out on your drive down to the ocean in California, Northern California's best British pub and restaurant you'll find on the shores of the Pacific Ocean or in the heart of Silicon Valley. In 30 seconds, we'll be back with the Make the Money and Run podcast, talk about sports from the weekend, preview the NBA, NHL, and talk a little bit more about the NFL football game tonight. I'm Vasu Vadaparty, solo hosting. Thanks to everybody watching on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Live. Don't forget you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We'll see you in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and Britannia Arms of Capitola. As we welcome you back into the studio, Vasu Vadaparty here, the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Been around for 40 years. They are the number one British pub and restaurant located in the heart of Silicon Valley. You can get to them on the border of San Jose and Cupertino, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. And on the shores of the Pacific Ocean in Capitola Village, right near Santa Cruz, 10 years old. They're the Britannia Arms of Capitola, where I will be this coming Sunday for another NFL Kickoff show, 12:45 Eastern Time, 9:45 a.m. Pacific Time. If you're in the area, come on down live. They're going to open the doors up a little early so we can do our show and have people come in and join us for the show. Otherwise, I will have the link for you to join in online. We want to meet everybody that follows our show on this Make the Money and Run podcast as well, too. But Facebook.com, Britannia Arms Capitola, 831-465-2583. All right, don't forget, we're on social media every day by 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll have the latest news, latest updates on the games that are going to happen that night. Not a lot of early games now with baseball being done, but 6 o'clock Eastern, Vasu Vadaparty, Charlie O, intern Nick Robinson with our selections, hashtag Selection Monday for today. And don't forget, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We're here every Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Mondays at 3, Thursdays at 1. Fridays at 1 also. We have no more baseball shows to do so, but Fridays at 1 o'clock Eastern. I'll make sure to change that graphic the next time it comes up. But 6 o'clock Eastern every day during the week, 3 times on Saturday, twice on Sunday. I was live at Cupertino yesterday at the Britannia Arms. What a day it was, meeting the people, getting their insights on the games, getting their questions asked, and also leaving some comments on how they enjoy their football as well, whether it's wagering or fantasy football, or just being a fan of a team. Lots of reasons to go see the NFL Sunday Ticket at the Britannia Arms in Cupertino and also in Capitola. All right, we get to the NFL. Let's start with the NFL here a little bit. We talked about the LA Rams and their off the field indiscretions. Tonight, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are -7, and 40 is the total over and under with the Chicago Bears. The Steelers are 5-3. They've already had their bye. The Bears need a win to stay close in the NFC North wildcard standings, still have them in place to stay within the reaches of a wild card. It's going to be very hard to do that as we look at the standings here. The Steelers are 4-3, looking to go 5-3. They are behind the Ravens, who got an overtime win yesterday at 6-2. They're one game ahead of the Browns. Actually, the Browns have one more win, but the Steelers have one less loss. And then Cincinnati lost to Cleveland yesterday, so they're 5-4 as well. So the Steelers tonight, a 7-point favorite. 40 is the total over and under for the Chicago Bears game tonight. Very interesting scenarios in the NFL. Cleveland destroying Cincinnati in an AFC North showdown. They move into third place. The Bengals are now in last place in the AFC North, which is funny because when they beat the Ravens 2 weeks ago, they had the best record in the AFC thanks to the head-to-head tiebreaker of whooping on the Ravens in Baltimore 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when they played them in Baltimore. Yesterday, the Bengals got theirs by Cleveland, 41-14, the final score there. Cleveland destroying them. They move ahead of Cincinnati in third place. They're a game back of Pittsburgh, who plays tonight, and 2 back of Baltimore, who got the win over Minnesota in overtime, 34-31. Good for Minnesota. They covered. the 7 points. They were able to get a touchdown late in the game. Minnesota probably should have won that game. That's a number of games that they've lost in the fourth quarter. The Minnesota Vikings have. They are 3-5. The Bears are 3-5. The Packers 7-2. We'll get to the afternoon games in a second. How about Dallas getting stunned by Denver? Denver had the running game going. Teddy Bridgewater was outstanding. 30-16 the final score. They had a 16-0 lead at the half. Did the Broncos. They were doing everything right. Dallas got a couple of touchdowns late, but by that time it was already 30-0. The Atlanta Falcons trying to stay relevant in the NFC South. They're 4-4. They beat the New Orleans Saints in an upset. Trevor Siemian got the start for the Saints. Matt Ryan looked good for the Falcons. They get another game-winning kick from Koo to win it 27-25. They're a game back of the Saints in the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers got beat up by the New England Patriots 24-3, 26-3. They're 4-5. They're in last in the NFC South. The Panthers started off 3-0. They've only won one of their last 6 games, now 4-5. And, of course, Tampa Bay had a bye week. They are 6-2. In fact, let me make sure I got this right in the bye weeks here. Week 9, it was Seattle, Tampa Bay, Washington, and Detroit. All had bye weeks this week. So Cleveland destroys Cincinnati. By the way, let me point this out. I wish I had the photo. I wish I had the technology to do this. I don't have a producer to handle everything here. The Cincinnati weather station, I don't know if it was WLW, the famous TV station out there, or whatever. It was something that like WKRP would have done back in the day. But the weather news forecasters and the weather news put a billboard up outside of Cincinnati Stadium that said, "We're more accurate than Baker Mayfield's passes." You want to talk about classless? That was completely unnecessary, and I'm sure that didn't go by Baker Mayfield too bad, and I'm sure he probably had a little bit more motivation, not that he didn't need any more, but to put a sign up like that by the Cincinnati weather, by the weather team there at that local station, I want to say Channel 5, so I have no idea what that station is, but to me, that's something that's not needed. You certainly don't want to fire up your opponent already. Bulletin board material. They actually put a bulletin board out there, so go figure on that. But Cincinnati gets destroyed by Cleveland. They go from best record 2 weeks ago in the AFC to last in the AFC North. They are still in the wild card hunt as well. Dallas, we told you, get beat by Denver. Denver is now 5-4. They are a half game back of the Raiders, who lost yesterday. They got upset by the Giants. Derek Carr did not have a good game. Waller had a pretty good game. Interceptions, turnovers by the Raiders cost them. They never play well on the East Coast. They were a 3-point favorite. Of course, they've had their fill of the last 3 weeks with the John Gruden situation. And, of course, Henry Ruggs and the accident that caused the death of a young woman in Las Vegas at 3:45 in the morning on Tuesday morning, the player's day off, which was Tuesday. The Raiders have subsequently released him. I have not seen this. I've not seen the move. I didn't notice the Raiders roster yesterday when they were playing the Giants, but I thought they were going to have a tough time in New York. And sure enough, they did. The Giants coming off their near win over Kansas City last Monday night. They ended up getting the win. They're 3-6 and tied with Philadelphia, who lost to the Chargers yesterday as we get to the afternoon games. Miami, Tua Tagovailoa did not start for the Dolphins yesterday. They still beat Houston 17-9. They covered the 4-point spread. Jacoby Brissett got the start there for them, 17-9, the final score. Houston falling apart, 1-8. They traded Mark Ingram, their running back to the Saints, where he got drafted. Miami, only their second win. They're 2-7. They have the same number of wins as the Jets. They're a half game back of the Jets in last place behind New England, who's above 500 now, 5-4. Buffalo loses to Jacksonville, 9-6. Josh Allen did not look good at all. Defense played well, but that offense could not get going. Credit Jacksonville's defense for shutting down the Buffalo Bills, the number one team in offensive points scored and the number one team in defensive points allowed. They did the job on defense. They couldn't do it on offense, and they lose. They're 5-3, and all of a sudden they're only a half game better than the New England Patriots. One game back in the loss column are the Patriots. The next time they play each other is going to be very interesting for the Patriots and the Bills. Bills 3-1 at home, 2-2 on the road, 2-0 in the division, but 4-3 in the conference. And the Patriots 1-4 at home, 4-0 away. So they play well on the road. That is 2 road wins in a row after last week's win in Los Angeles and the win against the Carolina Panthers yesterday. All right, Vasi Vadaparty here with you on the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola and Cupertino. Solo host today, Charlie O on assignment. He'll be back with us on Thursday. There you got the early games: Cleveland over Cincinnati, Dallas loses to Denver, Atlanta beats New Orleans, Miami beats Houston, the Giants upset Vegas, Buffalo loses to Jacksonville. Baltimore nearly lost, but they get an overtime win. Justin Tucker, another game-winning field goal in overtime. And then New England beats up on Carolina in the early games. In the later games, how about the Chargers? They're back in the mix of things, 5-3. They overtake the Raiders for first place because of the head-to-head win they had in Los Angeles a few Monday nights ago. They're both 5-3. The Chargers back in first place. The Raiders at 5-3 in second place. The head-to-head tiebreaker, the difference. The Chiefs 5-4. They beat Green Bay 13-7, but that offense did not look good. Give Green Bay's defense a lot of credit, but Patrick Mahomes seems to be off, and they're having a tough time scoring points. And Jordan Love made his first start. It was not good for Jordan Love in the wake of the Aaron Rodgers fiasco, the COVID situation. He had to sit out. They lost. They're 7-2 in the NFC North. They pretty much got the division clinched. They've already beaten Minnesota. They've already beaten Chicago, and they've already beaten Detroit. So that's one. Those are 3 notches in their belt in the division. 3-0 in the division. Minnesota 3-5. Chicago 3-5. The Detroit Lions 0-8. They had the bye week this week, so they didn't lose to the Detroit Lions. But a tough game. Went way under the total of 48. Jordan Love had a tough time throwing the ball yesterday. He did find a touchdown late in the game. If you had the Packers like I did at +7, that line went from pick 'em to 7. The Packers got the touchdown and the extra point. They were able to cover the game against the Rams on Sunday afternoon, late afternoon. So the Chargers beat the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chiefs beat up on Green Bay, a low-scoring game, 13-7 there. Jordan Love with his first start. And how about the Arizona Cardinals? They go back into first place. They were never out of first place, but now they've got a basic 2-game lead on the Rams. We'll tell you about the Rams game against Tennessee on Sunday night in a second. But no Kyler Murray, no DeAndre Hopkins. San Francisco's front 7 on defense, still pretty good with Bosa and Fred Warner anchoring that front 7. But their secondary, talking about the 49ers, not good at all. Guys like Christian Kirk and Rondell Moore, Zach Ertz, guys like that. Chase Edmonds got hurt in the game, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks for their running game. But they're looking to get Kyler Murray back next week. In fact, week 10, the Arizona Cardinals will be at home against the Carolina Panthers, who've lost 4 out of 5. San Francisco will get the Los Angeles Rams on Monday night next week as well for week 10. But how about the Cardinals going in? They got a 17-0 lead. 49ers having a flicker of hope, getting a touchdown before the half, 17-7. But James Conner leads the NFL in touchdowns. If you knew that, you're a better fan than I am, because James Conner has 11 touchdowns this year in the NFL, and that's more than Aaron Jones. That's more than any of the top names that you would think of in the NFL. James Conner having himself. If you have him for fantasy football, you're having a good time with him, because he's doing very well, not only rushing the ball, and he's going to get a lot more rushing attempts now that Chase Edmonds is not there for the Arizona Cardinals. I believe, Chase Edmonds for the Arizona Cardinals. So Arizona 8-1. They lead the Rams by a full game in the standings, and actually 2 games, because they've already beaten the Rams this year. How about the Tennessee Titans? No Derrick Henry. They go into Los Angeles, a 7.5-point underdog. They tear apart the Rams. The defense was outstanding. Matthew Stafford got sacked, 2 interceptions, nearly had a safety, instead threw an interception rather than give up the 2 points. They lose to the Tennessee Titans as a 7.5-point underdog. The game stayed under. The Rams, with that loss, are 7-2. They're firmly entrenched in second, but they did lose a home game. One of their 2 games they've lost was the home game to Arizona. So Arizona has not only the tiebreaker, but also a 1-game lead over the Rams. So that's what's going on in the NFL tonight, Monday Night Football. By the way, last week in the NFL, the underdogs are 10-5 in terms of covering or winning outright. This week, especially with the afternoon games, 3-1 for the underdogs, with Green Bay, Arizona, and Tennessee all covering as underdogs. The only favorite that did win in the afternoon games, the late afternoon games, was the Chargers. They were only favored by 1, so basically a pick 'em. So that was the favorite. And so 3-1 in the afternoon, 6-3 in the morning for me, or early afternoon for you on the East Coast as well. So that's what we have in the NFL, the Steelers and Bears tonight. The Bears definitely need a win to try and stay in the playoff hunt. As we look at the playoff hunt right now, Tennessee, Baltimore, the Chargers, and Buffalo, the top 4. Vegas at 5, Pittsburgh at 6. They play tonight. The New England Patriots are in 7th, and Kansas City in 8th after their win. They have the tiebreaker over Denver in the division. and they have the tiebreaker over Cleveland, who is ninth. Remember, 7 teams make the playoffs. In the NFC, Arizona, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Dallas are the 4 division leaders. The Rams, New Orleans, Atlanta are the next 3, 5-7. Carolina at 4 and 5 is number 8. Minnesota 3 and 5. Seattle 3 and 5. San Francisco 3 and 5. Chicago 3 and 5. Philadelphia 3 and 6, and the Giants 3 and 6. That may be too much to overcome. After Philadelphia wins yesterday, the Giants lose. Giants win yesterday over the Raiders. Philadelphia loses to the Chargers. All right, that's going to do it for the NFL. Don't forget to take the dogs. Let me know if you think the Bears are the good play tonight. 7-point underdog at Pittsburgh against Ben Roethlisberger and Najee Harris, and that Pittsburgh Steelers offense on a 3-game winning streak. The Bears right now struggling a little bit. Their last game against San Francisco, they had a lead. They got beat in the fourth quarter. All right, when we come back in 30 seconds, we'll talk a little college football. We'll talk NBA and NHL for the last 20 minutes of the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola and the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, the best British pub and restaurant in Silicon Valley in Northern California, in Silicon Valley and on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Back in 30 seconds, Vasi Vadaparty here for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola and the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Check them out. When you're in Silicon Valley, check out the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. It's the longest running British pub and restaurant located in Silicon Valley on the border of San Jose and Cupertino. BritanniaArmsDienza.com, 408-252-7262, or on the shores of the Pacific Ocean in Santa Cruz, in the little village of Capitola, the little town of Capitola. 10 years old there for the Britannia Arms down there. Facebook.com/Britannia Arms. Capitola, 831-464-2583. Don't forget, I'll be there Sunday morning, 9:45 a.m. Pacific time for the NFL Kickoff show. They have NFL Sunday Ticket there, all your favorite games to watch, all your favorite teams, whether it's for wagering action, fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or just being a fan of a team. Check out the Britannia Arms of Capitola this Sunday for NFL Sunday Ticket. I'll look forward to meeting all the people, either online or in person, that follow our show, that want to come down and introduce themselves. We'll be happy to meet you as well. All right, the Britannia Arms of Capitola is where we'll be on Sunday. Vasi Vadaparty here for the Make the Money and Run podcast. The NCAA weekend looks like this. We've had the BCS rankings. We'll get week 2 of the BCS rankings tomorrow. What do you do with some of these teams? Georgia beat up Missouri. Ohio State holds off Nebraska. UNC comes back from 18 down. Wake Forest ruins their undefeated season. Wake Forest was number 9 in week 1. North Carolina was the class of the ACC coming into this year. Had a struggling year, but Sam Howell came back and brought them back a big comeback. I think I jinxed Wake Forest. I said they were going to go 9-0. Sorry, John Makovic, Tim Duncan, Chris Paul, all you Wake Forest alumnus. I apologize for jinxing them. Mississippi over Liberty. Hugh Freeze, the coach of Liberty, the former Mississippi coach. Bad taste by Mississippi on tweets about ripping Hugh Freeze. That was just terrible. Minnesota, number 20 in the country. They get stunned by Illinois. Illinois' defense, Brent Bielema has done a great job with Illinois. They stunned Minnesota. They beat them 14-6. Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett having a great year. He should be mentioned in Heisman Trophy candidacy. They beat up on Duke, 59 points. The 54 points they put up, 54-29, a 3-touchdown favorite. They barely covered. Cincinnati did not get very many style points. In fact, Tulsa had a chance to tie the game with a touchdown and a 2 late in the game. Cincinnati forced a fumble. They win 28-20. Notre Dame rolls over Navy 34-6. They were number 10 last week. Oklahoma State over West Virginia, 24-3. They covered the 3.5. Oklahoma State's defense really good. They should move up in the standings. The big upsets are TCU upsetting Baylor. TCU, Gary Patterson gets fired. He leaves the program. Jerry Kill, the former Minnesota coach, on the interim basis, gets a 30-28 win over Baylor. And Texas A&M and their defense, they shut down Auburn pretty bad. They beat them 20-3. And Auburn's offense could not get going. Bo Nix had a tough game as well. BYU rips Idaho State. Wisconsin scores 52 on Rutgers. The bigger upset is Purdue in that defense. They upset Michigan State after the Spartans had just come off a victory over the Wolverines, their in-state rival. Purdue beats them and beats them pretty soundly. And Michigan State was number 3 in the BCS coming into today. Arkansas holds off Mississippi State. Mississippi State did cover the 4 points there. North Carolina State keeps rolling. They keep FSU down. Florida State in a bad way this year. They lose to them 28-14. Alabama holds off LSU. How about Alabama? They only got 6 yards of rushing, and LSU had a chance to win the game. That was 20-14 the final score, but LSU had a chance to score a touchdown and pull a major upset. Alabama, no style points there. Do they stay at number 2 or do they go down to number 3? Tennessee beats Kentucky. Tennessee beats Kentucky 45-42. Iowa wins a close one versus Northwestern 17-12. Boise State, a 5.5-point underdog, really struggling this year, but they got it going against Fresno State. They ended up taking out Fresno State 40-14, 5.5-point underdog for Fresno State in the desert down there in the Central Valley. But Boise State came in, and what they used to do routinely in their good years, they came in and just tore apart a Fresno State team, and that hurts their chances for moving up in the BCS rankings as well. Oregon, what does Oregon do? They came in number 4 last week. They beat their rival, the University of Washington, 26-16. It was a tough game, bad weather, but Oregon holds off. There's some that think that Oregon could overtake Alabama by way of that defense and move into the number 2 spot. Not so sure about that yet. Alabama's still pretty good. It was a 26-16 win. The Pac-12 hasn't gotten a lot of respect, and the fact that Oregon was number 4 to begin with certainly says something about them as well too. So tomorrow night when the voters come back, it wouldn't surprise me if Oregon goes to 2. But I'd be really surprised. If that happens from the standpoint of Alabama moving down, and we don't know how far Michigan State will go down. Speaking of Michigan schools, the University of Michigan covered the 20.5. They beat Indiana 29-7. What about Michigan? They were down there as well too, and then the loss to Michigan State hurt their BCS rankings. Do they move up a little bit? Indiana, it's not anybody's fault. Indiana didn't have as good a year as everybody thought they would be, but they're not very good. And this is not a big win, in my opinion, for Michigan, other than covering the 20.5. So we'll see how far up they move. Michigan State down in the rankings now, but they should still be ahead of Michigan based on head-to-head meetings, because that's what the committee did for Ohio State and Oregon when Oregon went into Ohio State and beat them about 6 weeks ago at the Horseshoe. And then San Diego State holds off Hawaii late night in Hawaii on the island, 17-10. San Diego State favored by, I think they were favored by, let's see here. Let's check it out. San Diego State was favored by 7, so they push on that game. Hawaii's defense held them down. San Diego State got some good rushing attempts. All right, individual conferences. How about Clemson? Clemson, only the second time they've covered in their last 11 games. They beat Louisville 30-24. Miami holds off Georgia Tech 33-30. Big 12, K-State rips KU. KU had that one big first half against Oklahoma a few weeks back, but Kansas State ends up beating them 35-10. And Iowa State and their defense, they were highly ranked. They were number 2 in the country for a while, and then that loss came off. They held Texas to 7 points. Bijan Robinson, the Heisman candidate for running back for Texas, he was held in check. They got off to a 7-3 lead, but then Iowa State roared back and they won 30-7. They take out Texas. In the Pac-12, in the Big Ten, Penn State, the only non-ranked team is Penn State. They were ranked in the top 10 as well too, but they're out of the rankings after 2 losses in a row to Iowa and to Ohio State. They beat Maryland. They beat Maryland on their way to another Big Ten victory. In the Pac-12, Utah ripped Stanford on Friday night. I was there. It was ugly, 21-0 in the first quarter, 52-7. Utah over Stanford. They lead the South Division of the Pac-12. It looks like they're going to get in that way as well too. Arizona beats a COVID-laced Cal team. Cal was favored, but Arizona takes them out 10-3. The big upset in the Pac-12, Colorado upsets Oregon State. Oregon State now 2 back of Oregon in the North Division. And ASU holds off USC. That's not Utah State. That's USC covers the -10 as Arizona State wins the game 30-16. In the SEC, only one big game, and that's Florida. What happened to Florida? 20.5-point favorite on the road at South Carolina. They lose. Not only do they lose by 23, they're a 20.5-point favorite. So you're talking about a 40-point swing. They are not having a good year. Florida is definitely not having a good year. They are not going to contend in any SEC competition at all. They might not even get a bowl game the way they're playing. And could this be the end of Dan Mullen at the University of Florida? We'll see how that goes. In the American, a couple of games to mention. The American, Memphis upsets SMU. East Carolina rips Temple. UCF barely hangs on over Tulane. Houston was a 14-point favorite. They didn't cover against South Florida as well. The Mountain West Conference, great game between Army and Air Force. Army holds off 21-14, Wyoming over Colorado State. Utah State, that's the USU I meant for the Arizona State game, over New Mexico State. UNLV upsets New Mexico, 2-point underdog. Casey Freelove happy. His alma mater gets a win over New Mexico. And UNR, a 3-point win over San Jose State, 11-point favorite. But Reno gets the win, 27-24 in Nevada over the weekend. This week, we've got early football, MAC action this week, every Tuesday and Wednesday. One game not on the board yet. So there's only 2 games on the board right now. We'll have it for you either at 6 o'clock Eastern today, or 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Miami, Ohio, 7.5, 57 versus Buffalo. Western Michigan, 26, 62 versus Akron. And then on Wednesday, Toledo, 10.5, 50.5 at Bowling Green. Central Michigan, 2.5 and 74. There's the totals we're looking for. In MAC, 74 the total versus Kent State, and Ball State, 2.5, 62.5 at Northern Illinois. In the NCAA hoops, before we get to the NBA, the Champions Classic starts tomorrow. We'll have all the point spread lines. Lots of college basketball opening up tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow is November 9th, the first day of college basketball. A lot of non-conference games to go on. We'll break that down tomorrow on social media as well. But the headliners are the Champions Classic, Kansas versus Michigan State, Kentucky versus Duke on ESPN. Shout out to Dick Vitale. Not going to see him at the games. He's going through cancer recovery right now, so best wishes for him. He is college basketball. He's the biggest proponent for college basketball out there. So shout out to Dick Vitale as well too. You might not like his style, but the man has cancer. He's 84 years old. He's done everything he can for this game, and he deserves to have his body be rid of cancer and come back and do some more games. We're not ready to have Dickie V not call games yet. All right, back in 30 seconds. We're going to talk about the NBA and the NHL, the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and the Britannia Arms of Capitola. Back in 30 seconds with the Make the Money and Run closing sentiment on the NBA and the NHL. Final segment of the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vada Party here. Thanks to everybody on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Live. Christine out there talking about Michigan playing Penn State this weekend. Penn State could be a tough challenge for Michigan, as they always have been. They're going to Happy Valley. Michigan trying to stay in the BCS, so we appreciate Christine coming on with us as well too to let us know about that. The Britannia Arms of Cupertino. They are located in the border of San Jose and Cupertino. They can be reached at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com and also in Capitola, 10 years on the Pacific shores, on the Pacific Ocean shores, Facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola, 831-464-2583. All right, some NBA to go over here as well. Lots of things going on in the NBA. How about the Golden State Warriors? They barely cover against the Houston Rockets last night. I had them along with the Tennessee Titans, 12.5. They win by 13. Houston misses a shot at the end, didn't get a foul call there. So the Warriors bettors cover. They got a tough game. Back-to-back home games tonight. Thanks to Robbie on Facebook, too, for watching as well, too. Tonight, the New York Knicks are at Philadelphia. They're a 1-point favorite, 214 the total. The Sixers are 8-2. Knicks playing well as well. They lost to Cleveland yesterday. How about those Cleveland Cavaliers? We'll get to that in a second. Let's get through the line. Chicago, 1.5-point favorite over the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn got 2 victories over the weekend, one at Detroit, one at Toronto. Yesterday afternoon, they get a back-to-back scenario as they're going to Chicago. 1.5 points the favorite, 216 the total, not up there on the total. Memphis is 6 and 217.5 versus the Timberwolves. Dallas 8.5, 214 against the Pelicans. Miami playing very well, 1.5 and 204 at Denver tonight. Denver right there in the mix in the Western Conference. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but they're starting to pick it up. They're in 6th right now at 5-4. And then the Golden State Warriors, we mentioned, got the victory against Houston. They're going up against a tough Atlanta team. The Hawks and Trae Young coming into town, 3.5-point favorite, 222. That's at 10 o'clock tonight on the East Coast, 7 o'clock on the West Coast. Phoenix at Sacramento. Sacramento beat them the last time in Phoenix after coming back from a 13-point deficit. Phoenix a slight favorite, 3 and 226 at Sacramento. The Lakers host the Charlotte Hornets tonight, 1.5-point favorite, 227. LeBron James still out, probably be out for another week as well. The NBA news coming up. Joel Embiid out for COVID protocol. He's going to miss a few days. That's why the line for the Knicks is closer to a pick'em. Jaylen Brown out 1 to 2 weeks. He's got a bad groin. Warriors with the best record in the NBA. They've got Atlanta tonight. Without Ben Simmons, the Sixers' second best record overall, tops in the East at 8-2. Tough game tonight. No Embiid. Knicks playing pretty well, but the Cavaliers surprised them yesterday. Beat them up pretty good, as well as Toronto on Friday night. They came back down from 13 to Toronto Friday night on the road, and then come back on Sunday to beat up the Knicks on the road. So they're 7-4 the last 2 road wins. Balanced East. Utah, the only team, along with Golden State, with 7 wins or better. They're second in the West, a 7-3 record. They beat up on Orlando yesterday as well. The NHL, quick look at the NHL. The game of the night, the Rangers and the undefeated Florida Panthers. They only have 1 overtime loss. Remember, Joel Quenneville had to resign last week. The Rangers 110, 5.5. The Washington Capitals minus 250, 5.5 against the Buffalo Sabres, who traded Jack Eichel. Finally, they traded Jack Eichel to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. He's there. He's going to get his back checked on. They're probably going to have surgery. He might have to miss some time. But Jack Eichel, the once heralded number 1 draft pick, is no longer with the Buffalo Sabres. And the Toronto Maple Leafs will host the Los Angeles Kings, minus 265, 5.5 the total. Big favorites tonight in 2 of the 3 games. A pick'em for the Rangers and the Florida Panthers. The home goals, if you're into this, it's every game. The difference in the scores, the aggregate scores, kind of like soccer. The home goals, if you take them, are minus 245. And the Grand Salami, which is the over and under for all 3 games that are out there. They do it every night. You have to get them in before the first game starts. 17.5 the total in the Grand Salami for the NHL. All right. They Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Check out the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, the longest running sports bar, British pub and restaurant located in Silicon Valley on the border of San Jose and Cupertino. Britannia Arms, Deanza.com, 408-252-7262. Or if you're near the Pacific Ocean, near Santa Cruz in Northern California, check out the Capitola Village, the Pacific Ocean, 50 feet away. Facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola, 831-464-2583. I will be there Sunday, 9:45 for the NFL kickoff. They have the NFL Sunday ticket. Great breakfast, Bloody Marys. You got the ocean view. On top of that, I look forward to meeting people that follow our show. Please come down. The doors will be open a little early. Andy Hewitt, the owner, welcoming everybody in for the NFL Sunday ticket. For fantasy football, wagering action, daily fantasy sports, or just a fan of a team, come on down and catch the NFL Sunday ticket at the Britannia Arms in Capitola. All right. That's going to do it for us. Don't forget, we'll be back Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern, with Charlie O for the Make the Money and Run podcast. And then the Friday football show, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock a.m. We'll preview all the NFL NCAA weekend. We'll have the BCS rankings for this week out as well, too. Of course, the NBA and NHL. Don't forget, every day by 6 o'clock, we're on social media. We'll get you the latest news. We'll get you our selections for each day. Today, Monday, so hashtag Selection Monday, and we'll do that for you at 3 o'clock. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the games. Monday Night Football with the Steelers and the Bears. NBA with the Warriors and the Hawks, the best game on the board. The Nets and the Bulls in Chicago tonight as well, too. So lots of action. And then the Rangers and the Panthers in the National Hockey League. That's going to do it for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasi Vadaparty, Charlie O on assignment. We will see you Thursday live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, 1 o'clock Eastern. But keep checking our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. We have a Make the Money and Run group page, as well as a podcast page itself, a Facebook page for Make the Money and Run. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. Have a great afternoon. We will see you soon. Take care.